Now, jobs of that type, I mean, even on the low end, they're like, kind of $20,000 just in mitigation. It can go up to, $80,000, and just in the mitigation, getting things clean, dried, disinfected, deodorized, ready for reconstruction. So not even including the reconstruction, these are very big ticket items. There's HVAC system, there's contents, there's all of these categories that need attention. And the paper that I wrote explains all of this. And this paper is available to anybody who requested.
Welcome to the Mitigation Handbook podcast. I'm David Baker, and as always, I'm here with Bob Jordan. Bob, how you doing today?
Really good. Enjoying our Seattle weather out here. It's going really nice. We actually had a parade in our little city nice. Yesterday.
What was it for?
We do it. Yeah, we actually do it every year. It's just a community thing that we've done since 2002. And my mitigation company is actually one of the major sponsors as well, too.
Oh, that's great.
And it's going very well.
Do you have any photos of that?
I do. Yes. I got some photos of, the crowds. There was a petting zoo there, kids were playing in the bouncy house.
Look at that. It's great.
Lots of, just lots of people, lots of camaraderie. Hot rods were coming down, politicians, that are up for like election. Yep. There was some people on unicycles. So good stuff.
I really appreciate that about you, because that's a great business. You're serving clients, but you're also footed and rooted in the community, right? So you're part of the community, part of the fabric, what's going on. So that's thank you for doing that. But we're here to talk today about your new paper, your second in a series, Understanding Fire and Smoke Restoration. Before we get into that, though, let's talk a little bit about your Understanding series. Talk a little bit about what it is and how you got started with this series.
Okay, well, going back to when I first started in restoration, coming from a different industry entirely, I was brand new and quickly realized when I was in the field what I didn't know. And I thought I was the exception to the rule. I thought everybody else coming in probably came from a restoration company, moved into ownership, or were in a related trade, maybe reconstruction. And later on, as we finally gained a lot of experience, and we did it the hard way, we did it boots on the ground. I go in the field constantly as an owner. For the first 3 years of my ownership, I was in the field every day. And that was just by choice. I'm a real hands-on person. Wanted to really learn the science, the chemistry, the engineering behind the work that we were doing in property damage mitigation. Well, I thought I was the odd guy out. The reason why I didn't know what was going on is because I didn't come from this background. Well, when we began a mentorship program, after quite a few people came through my office, they would go through new franchise training, which is common for any franchise to host. It can be around 3 weeks, and there's various things that are taught. But they can't teach everything, and they really don't teach a great deal on the actual work that you're going to be doing in the field. I think back in the day, people came from this industry. It was understood what to do. People already knew what to do. Restoration is attracting, a new set of candidates that didn't have a restoration background, and I was one of them. And in the process of going through field work and realizing that I didn't know what to do, and then learning how to do it. And then when other people came to my franchise to spend a week with us, well, I'm finding nobody knew what was going on. Whereas I thought I was the exception to the rule, I found out that I was the rule. I mean, unless you worked in this industry directly, you're not going to know the specifics of how to work in this industry. Now, the franchise teaches QuickBooks and they teach marketing and they teach web. And those are things that you can already have experience with that on your way in.
I mean, they're important to run a franchise, obviously. In order to run a successful franchise, you need to know all those things. But you're saying they're accessible in ways that you can learn those.
But I think the gap is in actual field work, that's not being taught. At least it's not being taught extensively.
Yeah.
And so I was putting together a number of individual procedures, and whenever a mentor group would come through, I would email them like 10 different attachments, how to set up your van, how to do water, how to do mold. And that led to the book, the Mitigation Handbook. I was just thinking, I should put this in book form.
Yeah, it's really born out of your experience as well as your experience working with new franchise owners, right? This is the things that you wish you knew, wish you had when you started.
Oh man, oh gosh, yeah. But and then the book led to the website, because I realized that people would not be able to access vendors and suppliers and formulators through my book. So I needed a website that had links that you could obviously click. And then that led to putting the app on the website. And that led to all of the safety data sheets and a recommended initial equipment package.
Yeah.
And it just continued to evolve. Well, the next evolution in wanting to get word out to professional restorers how to do these different functions that we do was I started writing papers. And these papers will show up in the next version of the Mitigation Handbook, due out in 2027. But as I was looking at stuff, I realized that I wanted to teach deeper on the chemistry, the engineering, the science, the problem, not just how to deal with it. I also include that in my paper, but it's backed up with all of the previous science, engineering, physical world stuff and what's actually happening. The intention of the Understanding Restoration series is for people to have a very clear grasp of what's going on and why they're doing what they're doing. Obviously, they can modify anything to fit the current situation that they're specifically in. But I'm going to get people a long way down the road of knowing what's going on, how to deal with it, where to get the supplies, everything from A to Z.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a valuable thing. And so that's the next in the evolution is the Understanding Restoration series. We've got 6 titles already scoped. We've written 3 of those papers already. After I finish the 6th paper, there's probably going to be some more subject matter that I would want to write on, and making all of this available to people that are in our world.
Bob, this is really great stuff. One thing I noticed, these are being peer reviewed, first of all. So it's your expertise. You honed it by actually providing this advice to new franchise owners, and it's being peer reviewed by peers, each of these understand. And on top of that, I think you just mentioned you presented to an internal group of other franchise owners who are not new, they're more experienced. And they're reviewing it as well. So I would say this is a pretty vetted set of papers that you're going to be putting in your book.
It certainly is. Many of the reviewers, at least 4 of them, are either active IICRC persons or have been a part of the IICRC. Now, I don't claim that this is an IICRC document. It is not.
Okay.
There's a place for the IICRC. I certainly reference that in my papers. I don't want to repeat things that they're already teaching on. For example, one day we'll do a course on mold. got the paper written. Well, the IICRC has a great deal of information on mold types and, the physics and science behind mold itself. I don't need to duplicate that. They also teach how to don and doff PPE. They teach how to set up containment. I'm not going to repeat that. My course isn't, or the teaching materials that we put out are not intended to replace the IICRC. It's to work with the IICRC. I'm a big fan of the IICRC. I've taken multiples of their courses. Others on my staff have as well too. We are an IICRC certified firm, and we're all in with the IICRC.
Okay, so that's your understanding series. Today, we're going to talk about understanding fire and smoke restoration. Is that right?
Right. Yes. And it's a paper that when I started out, I had no fire restoration experience, none. And I remember going to my first couple of losses and just looking around at, wow, look at all this scorching, look at all this soot, look at this burned area. It's, insulation falling in, and just looking around and saying, I don't know what to do. And I had to give up those jobs early out. It wouldn't be fair to the homeowner. Now, jobs of that type, I mean, even on the low end, they're like, kind of $20,000 just in mitigation. It can go up to, 80,000. And just in the mitigation, getting things clean, dried, disinfected, deodorized, ready for reconstruction. So not even including the reconstruction. These are very big ticket items. There's HVAC system, there's contents, there's all of these categories that need attention. And the paper that I wrote explains all of this. And this paper is available to anybody who requests it. You can request it through the website, themitigationhandbook.com, in the contact area. And just say, hey, can you send me the paper on X, cigarette smoke, fire, mold? And I will. Now, I've got a couple of these are in peer review still, but the cigarette smoke odor is ready now, and I'm getting pretty close to having the peer review completed on the fire paper, and then I'll have the mold paper looked at next. Right. But these are all available. And the goal is for the new restoration owner specifically to just have some teaching and training and resources in order to go out and do the jobs that's on the side of his van and it's on his business card and on his website. You're a fire restorer. Well, you need to know how to do it. Our first fire, this is on the first page of my paper. I actually show a fire. Now, this photograph was actually taken by the tenant. You can see firemen walking. You can see the house ablaze.
Yeah.
This was on the 4th of July one year. And somebody shot off a bottle rocket, and there was 2 trees on either corner of the house. And one of them just went up like a Roman candle.
Oh my gosh.
And just burned the house badly. And this was a fire job, and we were pretty new, but this was in our first year of operation. But by this point, I had learned a lot, studied, put things into practice, and was able to successfully complete this job. We actually had a dumpster in the front yard, and we were throwing debris out of the upstairs window down into the dumpster because that's just how it was arranged. And we, kind of finished that job, of course.
So your paper goes into a number of things, but it starts with the 3 restoration objectives. What are the 3 restoration objectives?
Well, when we're doing a job like this, we are interested in the structure and in the contents and in the air quality. when you have a fire, people are coming in and out. They have to be safe when they're helping to get the contents out, and they're directing traffic for that. So we have to be concerned about the air quality for the people that are still coming through. The contents have to be properly handled. The contents are typically removed from the site, taken to a facility for cleaning and storage until the home is restored. And certainly we have to deal with the structure. We can't leave odor. We can't leave soot. We can't leave damage. Sometimes we have to do a demolition. Sometimes we can clean. Sometimes it's a combination of both. But we're always concerned about the structure, the contents, and the air quality.
Got it. And then you have in your paper, you have a whole list of definitions that help clarify, what we're even talking about as we go through this paper, right?
We do. And definitions are important, including the 3 fire types, and then, and I will kind of touch on those like in a moment.
Okay. All right. So how is the paper structured? You have 4 parts, and I think it's similar to the structure of your other understanding series, right? It's the same.
It is, yeah.
General structure.
So typically what I have is in part 1 is the problem. So for fire, it's understanding fires, smoke behavior, and the damage that they can create. This soot, if it's a synthetic fire, it's toxic. We have to deal with that. If there's an HVAC system that's compromised, we have to deal with that. Do we clean? Do we demo? There's just a number of steps that are part of what could be the problem, and we have to understand that problem. And then in part 2, I talk about the engineering and the chemistry of the subject matter at hand. So in the case of fire, we've got combustion, we've got heat. Heat drives odor into materials. We've got the behavior of smoke, and then we've got the chemistry that we're looking at that is going to help us doing the work that we have in front of us. So it's all of what's happening and what we're going to do about it. Part 3 is what we call restoration engineering, restoring the structure, restoring the contents, restoring the air quality, engineering decisions that are made based upon data, based upon observation. And then the 4th part is after we've talked about the first 3 parts, the problem, the engineering and the chemistry, the restoration engineering, then we talk about field application. What is it that you do? How do you work with your equipment? What do you do to get the job done? So all of these papers are not just theory, but they're laid out in a manner that's, I would hope, would be easily understood, not trying to make anything complicated, but I do want to express what is going on and then what to do about it. And that's where the field application part comes in. And we talk about manufacturers, we talk about specific equipment, specific chemistry, where to get it, how to use it, what to do, what the preferred order is.
Great. Okay, so the problem, the engineering and chemistry, the restoration engineering, and then field application.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. Let's go to start part 1, and let's start with the engineering, understanding the nature.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the nature of fire. Okay, so obviously fire needs fuel, it needs oxygen, produces heat, produces smoke and soot. Water vapor is a part of the combustion process as well. There's also combustion byproducts. And maybe the fire department showed up and they've splashed water everywhere. And so you've got wet materials. If you don't get this dealt with quickly, then you can have a mold problem.
Mm.
So we've got to move fast on these, and not moving fast produces secondary damage, which further delays when the people can go back into their home. And it's an increased cost for the insurance company.
Okay. So you talk about 3 types of fires then in this initial phase.
Right. So in the world of property damage restoration, we've identified 3 types of fires now. There's multiple, I mean, you can label arson as a fire, chemical fires, there's a larger list, but for the restoration world, we'd like to put things into 3 categories. One of them is what we call a protein fire. Half of all fires in the United States are stovetop fires, food fires. So we are burning living, chicken, beef, French fries, oil. These are all what are considered protein fires, and there's a way to deal with these. We also have synthetic fires. This is where plastic materials burn, keyboards, plastic containers, computers.
Electronics.
Right. It's the burning of petroleum-based products, and that produces a toxic, sooty smoke as well, too.
Yeah.
And we have to deal with that. And then the third one is just wood fires. Now, this is where the structure itself has burned.
Mm.
And it was like the original picture that I showed on the 4th of July fire. The wood fires are typically catastrophic. Okay. Stovetop fires pretty much, affect the kitchen now. Soot goes everywhere, but we haven't burned down timbers. When we have wood fires, those are catastrophic. And I'll toss this in. 3 out of 4 wood fires that we go to, wherein there was a catastrophic loss, the insured is underinsured.
Oh, really?
Meaning they don't have enough policy limits to deal with the mitigation, with the contents, with the putback, with them living off-site in a hotel for a period of time. These are all major concerns, and let me just toss in a public service announcement. Check with your insurance policy. Anybody who's listening, check with your agent and make sure that you have guaranteed replacement coverage. Guaranteed. Not, you got high limits. No. When we went through a period of high inflation and supply chains were affected here just, 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
The cost of everything spiked.
Oh, I remember
and
those
suddenly
wood went way up.
something,
Yep.
suddenly something that would have been sufficient for insurance now was insufficient. So anyway, we have the 3 types
guaranteed
of
replacement
fires.
clause is regardless of the increases in inflation and other costs.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, when we talk about toxic soot, one of the indicators that we've had a synthetic fire is smoke tags or soot tags. Now, many times the lady of the home sees these cobweb-looking structures up in the interface where the wall meets the ceiling, and she's embarrassed. She says, I'm so embarrassed. I didn't realize I had these cobwebs. And what she's thinking is that the cobwebs were always there, but they just were darkened by the soot that was produced by the fire. But in reality, there was no cobwebs there to begin with. This is how soot particles condense. And the corner of the home, or where the ceiling meets the roof, is cooler temperature wise by a bit, and that's where the soot condenses, and it does it in long chains, and it can look like cobwebs.
Sort of spider web, or yeah.
Yeah, and that's very discouraging to the person. When we get to part 4, I'm going to explain what we do about this.
Okay, so those are the 3 types of fires. We talked a little bit about how to handling each of those. You talked a little bit about soot tags. Those are soot tags that you're talking about here in the corner.
Yes, they are.
Gotcha. Yeah,
that's what they're called.
Yeah.
Now, we need a robust process to deal with fire. We have got synthetic fires, protein fires, wood fires, and combination fires. So say that a house burns badly and the wood's burned. Well, the odds of something plastic burning are pretty good.
Pretty high, yeah.
Yeah. And we've even seen protein fires that started on the stove, burned some of the plastic which was nearby, scorched the wood cabinets, and now just from the protein fire, you've got all 3 components. So we need a process whereby we can deal with what I call variation. Now, everybody's familiar with Betty Crocker cake mix. I mean, everybody had their moms making these cake mixes back in the day. Betty Crocker is a fictitious person. There's no such person. This is just what they did back in the day. This Betty Crocker cake mix has been out there for over 100 years. And it was engineered, the cake mix process was engineered to handle a fair amount of variation in what the person baking the cake could do. So, oh, gee, I don't have 3 eggs. I've got 2 eggs. Well, we'll just have to make it work. And, they put 2 eggs rather than 3. They put more milk than they were supposed to, less milk than they were supposed to. Didn't preheated the oven too much. Cooked it a little bit too long, didn't cook it enough. The cake mix still comes out and it works.
That's interesting. I had never thought about that. I've never thought about the engineering behind that.
Well, back in the day, we actually learned about this because my past work was as an engineer. And this was one of the examples about robustness is what we call this.
Okay.
A robust process, such as a robust restoration process, is going to be applicable to different fires, different conditions. We're using the same equipment, doing the same processes, and it works for all 3.
Got it.
And that's what we're going to describe in part 4. We want a robust process.
So you learn the process, you can handle virtually any type of fire.
That's correct. And, again, heat transports smoke, drives contaminants deeper. I've got a little, kind of graphic on that. Homes have porous materials. And again, we're always thinking, and I just pound away at this in the paper, think structure, think contents, and think air quality.
The 3, yeah.
All of them have to be dealt with. And we have different materials types. I've been overseas to many developing world countries, and a lot of the structures are concrete. They're concrete. They have a throw rug. When I was in Iraq, we had a swamp cooler, and it tipped over, and it got the carpet wet. It got the throw carpet wet, but it was a concrete floor, concrete walls, and it was and this is no exaggeration. It was 115 degrees, and it was 10% relative humidity. I mean, you got to work hard to get a DHU to produce that type of an environment. And here I'm walking in it.
Yeah.
And I just said, just put the swamp cooler back up, prop it back up properly. We'll keep using it. Everything's going to just dry out because of the atmospheric conditions. And that's exactly what it did.
Yeah.
But that's a different material. Over here, we've got wood, we've got paint,
Right.
we've got drywall, we've got carpets, we've got different materials that are permanently affixed, and they have pores, and smoke can be driven into them. We've got HVAC systems. All of that is something that we have to deal with.
And there's smoke and odor, but another thing you mentioned in the paper that was interesting to me, I didn't know that heat is often more destructive than the flames themselves. So you see a fire, you see where the flames are, you assume, well, that's where the damage is, but that's not necessarily the case. It's actually the heat that's generated from the fire can often be more destructive.
That's right. So I've got a little visual on that too, and you can often see what's called a heat line, where it's visibly darker at a certain line going up. Now, in a case like this, where there's extreme heat sustained, we're going to remove drywall. Sometimes we can clean this, but when the heat is high, odor particles are driven deeper into the materials, and you can't get them out reasonably. And so the best option is to remove the materials. And I'm one of the last people who wants to remove materials. It is more profitable to clean than it is to demo. And it's less disruptive as well. So less cost, less disruption, faster for people to get back into the home. But there are conditions where you do have to do the demolition, especially in fire, especially catastrophic fires.
But if you can salvage, it's a win for you and it's a win for the customer. They get to salvage.
It is, because it helps them to get back in the home faster because there's less to rebuild. Yeah. And, I've also got a graphic on, appearances can be misleading. Odor can hide in what we call many different reservoirs. And this is where demolition requires engineering judgment. What is actually going on? And that's part of what my paper is intended to help with as well, too.
Because something could look discolored, but it is structurally sound still, and it can be salvaged. And then conversely, it may not look bad, but you can see structurally it is a problem. Or
odor has been driven deeply into it, even if it looks reasonable. Odor could have been driven deeply into it, and I'll speak more about this as we continue to go along.
Okay. So you talk about asking the right questions. What are the questions that you should be asking?
Well, how much heat? How long did it take place? Was the HVAC system on when all this happened? What is the insured's situation? We actually did a very large commercial job where the owner of the large commercial building did not have insurance. It wasn't his fault, but just the bottom line was he didn't have insurance. He wasn't able to get insurance. It was a historic site, and he had insurance and went to renew it, and then they didn't. And then right on the heels of that, they had a catastrophic fire. So some materials that we could have been justified in removing, maybe they were like 50-50, say, we talked with the owner and says, okay, look, we actually can clean this and paint, and I think the risk of odor is very low, but it'll save you money. And of course, he was all about that. And that's exactly what happen. So you evaluate and you work with the insured, you work with the adjuster, come up with the proper scope, and then execute.
Got it. Yeah. And that's, you have a graphic that talks about from the problem to the science to the solution.
Yeah, I do. And then I got a few kind of bullet points on, asking the right questions as we spoke about. But yeah, so there's a problem. Okay. Then we understand the science behind what has happened. And then we go into, the engineering analysis and then the application, actually getting underway and getting things cleaned up and ready for reconstruction.
Okay. And that's really part one then, looking at the problem.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
And, just very kind of quickly, part two is engineering and chemistry. And this is consistent with all of the papers in the Understanding Restoration series. And this isn't intended to be an academic postdoctorate, high level words that people don't commonly use paper. This is meant for the restoration professional. Every one of the people who came through my office, and there's been a dozen by now over the years, who've mentored with me, every one of them are sharp people. If you're going to go into business ownership, take that risk, have the wherewithal to do it in the first place. You've got some accomplishments in your life, and you will be able to understand everything I write about. It isn't over anybody's head. It isn't intended to be. It's intended to be practical and understandable. So, I will talk about fire chemistry. People already get this, you got to have a fuel, you got to have oxygen, and then there's a process and there's byproducts. There's carbon dioxide, there's water, there's carbon monoxide for incomplete combustion. There's soot, there's smoke, there's volatile organic compounds, even acids. And, all of this condenses and it's on the surfaces, and we've got all these residues, and now we have to have a proper restoration process. So, that's kind of the fire chemistry. We'll talk about pyrolysis.
Talk about pyrolysis, not paralysis, but pyrolysis.
Right. Pyrolysis, yeah. This is where materials are breaking down before they actually ignite. And that typically means that it's high heat. So we did a job at a establishment that had ornamental but structural beams. So you could see the beams, and they were soot damaged big time, and it got hot in there. They also had a canoe, and it was completely blackened. Okay, so we were able to remove the soot 100% through garnet blasting, kind of like sandblasting, only we use a very fine mineral called garnet. But you could see where the tone of some of the wood had changed. We were actually in a basement doing a residential job, and we've got a picture of this where it shows the scaly sooted surface on the ceiling. And then after we did the garnet blasting, but you can see some dark grain lines. Now, there is no soot there. It's completely cleaned. It doesn't need to be soot, or it doesn't need to be smoke odor sealed. But that's an example of pyrolysis.
Gotcha.
Where the heated material has changed physical appearance, but it's still structural and it's still sound, but the heated material did get changed, did get transformed.
Right. So in that case, that's not something you would try to remove. That's actually the structure at this point.
It is, yeah. And we even had the owner in both cases, in both the commercial establishment and in the residential, said, yeah, I don't smell anything. Everything's clean. Everything looks good. And they just simply, in the example of the commercial place with the canoe and the ornamental support beams and trusses, is they just simply stained over them after we were through cleaning them, and good as new, and it just adds to the character of the place now.
So you talk about the fire chemistry and pyrolysis. You also talk about heat transfer. You talk a little bit about how the heat transfers through the buildings and the three fundamental mechanisms. Why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So, in the world of heat transfer, so you have what's called conduction, and we have convection, and we have radiation. So going from the third one, so heat radiates. Our heat from the sun is radiating onto us. Is that a word?
I think so. Yeah. Radiating onto us. Yes.
Yes. Thank
you. Radiating
heat.
There you
anyway.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like a convection is, heat moves with the movements of the hot gases and smoke.
Gotcha.
When I was a teenager, I worked at a restaurant and we had convection ovens.
Convection ovens. Yeah.
So air was actually moving inside of the oven.
Yeah.
And then, of course, conduction is like when you touch a hot surface, heat's transferred to you directly. It conducts to you. Well, all of these three types of heat transfer occur in a fire.
Oh, right.
And that's just something that we want to understand, that soot moves throughout the structure, that conduction is a method, but radiant heat is also a method.
I see.
Things get hot at a distance because of an event like in one side of the room, that heat affected the other side of the room or even into the hallway if it's got a direct line of sight.
Gotcha. You also talk about smoke deposition, how smoke particles condense and adhere to the surfaces throughout the structure.
Yeah, we already talked about that a little bit with the synthetic.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, so as we're doing this podcast right now over in my state, Washington, on the eastern side of our state, Spokane, they're having tragic and heartbreaking and catastrophic fires. Some of the homes are burned to the ground. But homes on the periphery are affected by the smoke, even if they haven't been burned, they're still smoke affected. And so those residues are on the surface. Sometimes they're easier to clean if it's a smooth, non-porous surface, but if it's a porous surface, then it's harder. And, you've got to consider, ceilings, cabinets, contents, windows, HVAC, all of these things we have to deal with smoke. You can't deal with the whole structure and ignore the HVAC system, because then what happens when they finally turn that on?
Yeah.
Well, anything in there is going to start blowing into the living space. So smoke deposition is something that we have to pay close attention to. We also, one of the things that we do because of this deposit is we do an operation called corrosion control. Now, anybody who's using using the industry standard software for line items knows that in Xactimate, there is gosh, there's probably over 100 line items that deal with corrosion control. We will talk about this a little bit later, but corrosion control is soot can be acidic. And so soot left on certain surfaces, countertops, appliances, plumbing fixtures, light fixtures, cabinetry, these are all items that can be discolored or pitted or stained if the soot is just left there until it comes time to come in and do the work. So I will talk about this in part 4, but we have to get that corrosive material off of surfaces, and soot is corrosive. It's acidic. And that actually leads me into part 3 then, David.
Okay.
What I call restoration engineering.
Okay.
So I've got an ecosystem diagram. The first thing we do is we assess and we consider the, engineering implications, the chemistry we're going to use, building science, equipment, field procedures, verification, documentation. And then it's back to assessing again, because we might have to assess something different in a different room. And again, successful restoration, we keep pounding away on this. We were taught this by Jeff Jones, who teaches the Microbial Warrior series of courses, that you have to be concerned with the structure, with the contents, and with the airspace. And the restoration ecosystem does that. It's a combination of engineering, chemistry, and field applications working together. Now, when we're restoring the structure, okay, we have got different materials that we're working with. We have painted drywall. We have wood framing, millwork that's finished. The wood framing's not finished. It's behind the drywall, but if you pull it out, then maybe we have to do something with that. Masonry and concrete, we use garnet blasting for that to restore the structure and to get the contaminant out. We are not fans of covering damage. We are fans of removing damage, removing the soot, removing the odor-producing soot, rather than spraying over it. Now, I won't debate those who choose to do that, and it's been done for many years, but I believe that there's better chemistry today, there's better equipment, and we can remove rather than cover over.
Maybe it's a choice you had to make at one time, who knows, but certainly today you have the tools and the chemistry. You can actually get a lot done without having to do that.
That's right. And, heat drives into materials. That is, heat causes odor to drive deeper into materials. We did an assignment one time where they were cooking food. They were actually making dog food. This here was a farm, and they were making dog food, and my how heat and time drives odor deeper into materials is an example of this. They had a big kettle, a big pot on an island stove, and it had all sorts of farm, gizzards and chicken parts and other parts, and they were making dog food. And by pure accident, they forgot it was on the stove and they left for the day.
Oh.
And they came back 8 hours later, and there's this gray, acrid smoke throughout the house. It was like a 3,000 square foot house. It had 3 levels. Every level was 1,000 square feet. It was very, very big. Lots of expensive cabinetry and china hutches and dressers. And this odor just drove into materials. And when you have a case like that, then you have to decide what you're going to do. Now they had solid wood cabinets. Solid wood cabinets are porous, but the pores are pretty small and pretty tight.
Oh.
We actually could clean those, but there's other materials that had to be removed because because just due to time, these particles are very small and they can penetrate into materials. If you clean the surface and you have this odor deeper into the surface, then in time that comes back out into the airspace and it can be detected. So we consider the duration of the event when we're looking at if we're going to remove materials or clean them. We also look at heat. Heat also drives odor particles into materials. It's a vapor pressure phenomenon, and it just drives them in, and then you maybe or maybe not can clean sufficiently to where they're not going to come back out and be detected. So the two principal methods are the two principal areas that we look at if we're going to demo or clean is the duration of the loss and the heat intensity of the loss.
Okay. Yeah. And then looking at the surfaces, you could look at porous, semi-porous, and non-porous. Do you tend to categorize them that way as you look at what can be restored?
We do. So say, for example, and I've got an example of a, kind of place setting at a wood table. Okay. There's porous materials there, there's semi-porous, and there's non-porous. Okay. Going from the first, porous materials, okay, the fabric placemats. Okay. Those are porous. In a loss, they're probably going to be discarded. They're not worth, going through the effort to get them restored. It's a placemat, it's fabric.
Yeah.
And it's very porous. It's easy for odor to drive into them deeply throughout, and it's just not worth attention. Okay, then we have semi-porous, and that would include the wood chairs, the wood table itself. We examine those on a case-by-case basis. Can they be cleaned sufficiently? Can they be restored? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And again, heat, duration, soot, if the fire department splashed water all over it, how long it's been since it happened until we were able to get clearance to go in and do something about it. All of these things matter in making decisions on restoring versus discarding in this case. And then the non-porous, the 4 dinner plates there, the vase that's holding the flowers, those are made out of a ceramic. There are no pores. The, kind of silverware there, the flatware, made out of a metal. I mean, I could put that in a very horrible Cat 3 situation for 2 months, bring them out, clean them, and they're good as new because there's no pores to deal with.
Yeah.
So all of these things are considered, and that's part of the contents in this case. Again, structure, contents, air quality, according to Jeff Jones, which is very accurate.
And speaking of air quality, maybe we can touch on this, the HVAC system. I don't know if it's typically ignored or if there's typical approaches to doing that, but you have a particular approach that you use. I think it's the RAM air and the RAM air system and David Hart's approach, positive air duct cleaning. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So the RAM air system is the only HVAC cleaning system approved by the Microbial Warrior Academy. I have 2 systems. They're not all that expensive. They're, compared to negative air systems that actually require a vehicle large vacuum systems, long hoses, that can be up into the six figures. I can get a complete system from Dave and get some other accessories, right around 6K-ish. And we have two of them, and we use them frequently. We use them for fire jobs. We use them for cigarette smoke odor. We use them for interior mold. We use them for biohazard, both blood biohazard and illicit drug cleanup. We use it for virus, if that's in the home, systems. There's many uses, and the HVAC system is one thing that often gets overlooked. It just gets overlooked. Yeah. Everything else gets done, but nobody did anything about the HVAC system. So we use the RamAir, ramair.co, developed by David Hart and his engineering team. David is the founder of RamAir, and we enthusiastically endorse his system. In fact, the first time we used it, I've actually shared this before, but he actually came out to help us do a fire job that also was an illicit drug job as well, too. So it was two things in one. And Dave came out with one of his top guys, and me and my guys were there, and we were watching and helping and being trained and taught, and all the work was getting done. And Dave's out of Bend, Oregon, which is, 4, 5, 6 hours from us here in Seattle. He, kind of drove up, brought his equipment with him, and he's packing it up. And I said, hold the boat, I'm keeping this equipment.
You saw how effective it was. You saw how easy it was to use. You thought, hey, I can make use of this.
Bought it on the spot, kept it, ended up getting another system, and we thoroughly endorse it.
Oh, that's great. So we've talked about the problem. We've talked about engineering and chemistry. We've talked about that was the restoration engineering. Let's talk about the fourth part, field application.
Okay. So in the field, and this is where the rubber hits the road. So this is where you have to go do the work. You don't want to walk into the house and look around like I did and say, I don't know what in the Sam Hill is going on. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to know when I'm done. I mean, I don't know how to do this. So everything we've done up to this point is leading up to what it is that we'll do in the field. So we approach this in 4 phases. And this is what we developed and what we know works, and we do this time and again. So there's 4 phases of fire restoration. And this is just dealing with the structure. Well, I guess I'm dealing with structure, contents, and air quality. So let me go ahead and share the 4 phases. Okay. So phase 1 is what I call day 1. So our first phase all takes place in 1 day. This is where we assess and stabilize. We are preparing for the pack out of the contents, and we're protecting surfaces. We're improving the quality of the airspace, and we're removing damaged materials. So on day 1, we'll have a team. It could be 1 person, 2 persons, 3 persons, 4 persons, depending upon the size of the job. But on the first day, we have goals, and we do corrosion control. I'll speak to that a little bit more in a bit. And then after phase 1, but before phase 2, is when the pack out of contents takes place. We want to improve the air quality and stabilize the area in phase 1, because the insured is going to be in the home subsequent to our day one, helping to direct traffic with those that are going to be removing the contents. And they're not going to be wearing respirators, and they're not going to be wearing PPE. They're just going to come wandering in because that's what, a civilian does, if I can use that term. Then in phase 2.
That's a better term than amateur.
Okay. Then in phase 2 is where the demolition begins, and this is where we remove all of our air quality equipment because our team can wear PPE. We can wear respirators, and we do. So we're not running equipment for the sake of running equipment and billing for it. That's just not our style. Our style is to do what's needed when it's needed and be efficient about it. So phase 2 would be demolition, and that can be a very lengthy phase. Or if it's like a stovetop fire, maybe I'm only removing some cabinets and some drywall, and that's it for the demolition. After the demolition phase, then we have phase 3, which is surfaces. So this is where we clean, restore, deodorize all structural surfaces and components. And then phase 4 is the volume airspace. This is where we treat the airspace, but we're also penetrating into areas that are cracks and the crevices and trying to treat the remaining contaminants.
Right.
So again, structure, contents, air quality.
All three.
But those are the 4 phases. Now, sometimes in phase 1, you don't have power. Sometimes in a house fire, you don't have power. So you have to bring a generator so that you can do some of the operations that are part of day 1 if you don't have power.
Yep.
Sometimes we're able to have power hooked back up. So we contact an electrician that we know, and he gets a permit, and maybe he can put up a temporary pole, or maybe he can tie into the electrical panel. Even though it's been inactivated, he can make some parts active, and then we attach a spider box to that, and then from that we have electricity.
Got it.
And that works very well. Part of our day 1 activity also is to remove source materials. So I've got an example here of where a guy had a wood stove, took out the ashes, thought everything was cold, had them in a paper bag, had caught the exercise equipment on fire, the vinyl on the seat, synthetic, burned some of the nylon carpet. So on the first day, we got that burned exercise equipment out into the backyard. And a day or two later, we were able to bring, our trailer and haul it away, but we had to get it outside.
Yeah.
And we had to cut out the carpet that had been affected because it continues to off gas. And then we vacuumed up all of the fire extinguisher material that was used, and that gets the odor under control.
Okay.
Then we thermal fog, and thermal fogging on the front end is encapsulating odor particles and inactivating them.
That's just in the air, right? You're fogging for the air, just getting everything that's currently in the atmosphere at the time. Yeah.
Yes. And then we'll set some equipment, and this is why we need electrical power, not only for our fogger, but we set up air scrubbers, and we set up a hydroxyl machine. And I explain how that works on my website, on my app. I've got a very good YouTube that I found that really explains well what the hydroxyl ion does in the atmosphere. Well, we're reproducing that with this equipment, and it works great. We choose not to use ozone. Ozone can be hazardous to people,
Hmm.
but I can set the hydroxyl generator in a baby's nursery. And, I did a job for an elderly lady one time, and she had a fire in the fireplace. The smoke came out. And so we did our first day work there. We set the hydroxyls, let them run. And she said that she never slept so well in the last number of years.
Right? Wow.
Just the air freshness that it produces. We certainly, now these are not inexpensive items. They can be in round numbers, $4,000 a unit.
Mm-hmm.
We have 6 of them. We think that they're worth having.
Yeah.
Of course, we wear all of our PPE. We use the Max Air helmet set, headset. We're in full PPE with gloves when we're working in the environment. And we want to use the Max Air helmet system. We want to have good gloves, a good Tyvek suit, good shoes. All of our guys wear safety toe shoes, and that's just
I love
part
how
of
you
our
use
uniform.
top-notch equipment, right? Some would say, well, is it really overkill for the Max Air? But it's really like you're prepared to go into any environment, handle any substance pretty much now when you have that kind of coverage. And since you're professional, you're going to go in to mitigate virtually any environment.
Right. So the half-face 3M respirators are like $10. And the full face respirators are, I don't know, $40, $50, $60 or such. The Max Air helmet system is $1,500.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we have 4 of these. We don't use them every day for everything, but when we're doing fires, illicit drug cleanup, working with garnet blasting.
You don't know what you're going to get, right? You have no idea what kind of contents or toxins you're going to face.
Yeah. Jeff Jones also teaches safety is the prime directive.
Right.
And we agree with that.
Yeah.
And then one of the things you recall that we talked about the soot tags.
Yeah.
On the first day, we removed those, and we removed those with lamb's wool dusters. I call them foxtails, but they are, you just swish them along the wall. They have a telescopic handle, at least that's the ones you want. And you can get all of that stuff off the walls. We aren't cleaning the walls, but we are removing the soot tags.
Yeah.
Cleaning with chemistry comes later.
Okay.
That's our third phase when we're dealing with surfaces. But just for the morale of the homeowner, we got to get these soot tags off.
Gotcha.
And we'll go through the whole house and we'll use these up and then we throw them away. We don't clean them. They've got an electrostatic property to them, and it just draws these soot tags right onto it, and it just cleans it right off. You don't want to put water on it because these are oily. Oil and water don't mix. We will get to that later when we're doing the actual wall cleaning, but we're taking off the gross contaminants with this, and that's done on the first day.
So what we've talked so far, that's day 1. That's a lot. You're doing a lot on day 1.
And just really quickly too, the last part of day 1 is corrosion control. I sort of touched on that earlier. Again, we aren't cleaning the surfaces. Cleaning happens later, and there's line items for cleaning. This is corrosion control. We are just getting the soot off the surface. And you can spend an hour doing corrosion control, and it bills out like $1,000 for all of the individual things you've done. But you got to do it right. You don't want pitting, staining, secondary damage to occur. You've got to do this on the first day. You can't do corrosion control 3 weeks after the event. Forget it.
Yeah.
You got to do it right away. And this is why it's a part of what we call day one.
Okay.
And then we're on to phase 2 after that.
Phase 2, demolition.
Yeah. So phase 2 happens after the day 1 is done, and then however long it takes pack out to occur, whether it's 3 days or 2 weeks. After pack out is done, then it's time to selectively demo materials.
Got it.
Now, odor particles are very, very small. So we have to use the Betty Crocker good housekeeping method of making sure that our processes work and that they deal with odor. So we've talked about when it is that we need to do demolition. I've got a picture in the paper, and it shows drywall, and it shows where the screws that are holding the drywall on, but have been mudded over, sanded, tape sanded and textured and painted. When you run your finger over those dots, you can't feel anything. You can't feel anything. But what that is that's condensed odor onto a cooler surface. The actual screw heads in the environment are colder temperature-wise than is the surrounding drywall. Soot condenses on that surface. That tells me that I had a very hot surface, and because I get that condensed look to it.
Yeah.
Now, that is an indicator. You don't always necessarily have to take the wall out. But if I have other indicators like, fair amount of soot damage or something, and then I see this as well,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to take the wall out.
Got it.
I've got other pictures like of the ceiling where the paper drywall is actually falling down. The light fixtures are melted. All of that's going to come out. The Venetian blinds that are melted, this is an example of radiant heat. The fire was on the other side of the room. These are the Venetian blinds got melted. There was a lot of heat. I will look at perhaps removing materials in that case. And then there's other, kind of general ones that show, the ceiling burned through. Okay, that was pretty hot. A lot of materials are going to have to come out in that case. And after the demo is done, then we're on to phase 3, which is surfaces. So you can have cooking fires being the reason why something went wrong. In a kitchen, we'll typically use degreasing chemistry. I actually describe that and what the concentrations are. This is actually part of what we call the TACT cleaning model.
Right.
Where the first, where it's temperature. So that's thermal energy. There's agitation, which is mechanical energy. There's chemistry, which is potential energy. And then there's dwell time. So that's actually the last T is time. And that's chemical energy transfer. So that's allowing the potential energy of the chemistry to actually do its job, and that takes time.
Right.
If you spray on something, that's one thing. If you foam on the same material, well, that's different.
You get dwell time that way. Yeah.
Yes. And we talk about which equipment to use, by the brand name, which chemistry to use by the brand name. And we show, a picture of foaming on with a multi-sprayer, agitating with the Ryobi system, and then microfiber cloths using the contact mop heads and electrostatic microfiber cloths.
Yeah.
to remove the materials that
Yeah.
have been brought to the surface and cleaned. And then we clean, cabinets, appliances. And even though we did corrosion control in the beginning, now we're cleaning with actual real proper chemistry. When we're doing corrosion control, we're not going to have a spray bottle of soap and water. I'm just getting the soot off.
Yeah.
But when we're cleaning, then we use, kind of disinfectants and proper cleaning,
Gotcha.
proper cleaners for that.
So once you've done the cleaning, then you do the volume airspace.
That's right. So here again, we're back to air quality that Jeff Jones teaches: structure, contents, air quality. So here at the end, we will use a couple types of fogging systems. We will use cold fogging or ULV. And this is where we have a disinfectant deodorizer, and it's got a particle size that's larger than what our final fogging is going to be, which is thermal fogging. I will try to space these out. So like I'll do heavy ULV fogging on the first day, and then the second day we'll come back and we'll do the thermal fogging.
Gotcha.
And the thermal fogging originally was to capture particles in the airspace.
Mm-hmm.
Thermal fogging in phase 4 is to actually get into the crevices and cracks of cabinets and vanities and wall spaces and trim areas.
Do you fog a little heavier then in phase 4 with thermal fogging than you do the first time? Or is it the same and it just is different purpose?
Thermal fogging, if you thermal fog heavy enough, you can't even see, 4 feet in front of you. We would probably thermal fog a little heavier at the end.
At the end, yeah.
Gotcha. just because we want to create a lot of volume of material and give it time to, kind of penetrate into materials in a way that we're not so much interested in that in the beginning.
And those really stay afloat. Sorry to interrupt you, but those stay afloat. They're 2 to 5 microns in width, and they really just sort of hang in the air for quite some time.
They do. Yes, they absolutely do. And we describe the different kinds of equipment used in the paper so that the person who has the paper has got the blueprint, and you can go to the website as well, and it shows you where to get all of this stuff. And that's the purpose of the paper. Of course, you always have to do proper documentation for insurance purposes. Just make sure you document properly. It'll save you time on the back end. With the ability to take digital photographs the way that we can, a person doesn't really need to limit the amount of photographs that they take. You can take 200 photographs if you want, and it is what it is.
Bob, talk about that just a little bit, because it seems like the documentation step seems so laborious to the average mitigation specialist, but it's such a critical step in order to get compensated for the work you've done, right?
That's all true. The old saying is, if there's no picture, it didn't happen. So you want to take the time to take pictures of what you're doing. Now, like say on a corrosion control, okay, I'm touching dozens of items. I'll take a picture like of a couple, showing that I'm doing the work. If I'm fogging the whole house, maybe I'll show fogging taking place in 2 rooms, but not 10 rooms. Just because, you're trying to do your work, and then you got to pull your camera out and stop. And, it's just like you said, it's a pain in the neck, but you have to do enough to make sure you get paid. If you're doing HEPA vacuuming, make sure you got a picture of you HEPA vacuuming.
Yeah.
If you don't have a picture of it, then you might get denied.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then
and
you
then
finally have a graphic at the very end of your paper, fire restoration, systematic engineering process. I think it's a really nice demonstration of the full process here.
it is. And, a lot of us are, kind of visual. And so there's a lot of text in the paper. I mean, it's quite a long paper. No one's ever accused me of being short on stuff, like it's over 40 pages long. But there's a series of pictures that even if you just looked at the pictures, you're going to get a really good feel for what's going on. And, you want to make good decisions. You want to understand the fire loss that you're dealing with. You want to apply engineering and science. You want to achieve the 3 objectives: restore the structure, restore the contents, restore the air quality. You want to follow a logical restoration Betty Crocker sequence that just works. It just works all the time. It works for everything. And you can come out with a very good result using the process that I'm sharing. Safety, again, the prima directive. I wouldn't go cheap on this, because you're going to be doing a lot of it. And, we just follow the fundamental principles and we're going to succeed. Engineering, chemistry, craftsmanship, judgment, restoring properties, restoring people's confidence.
And just one more thing, you have at the back of your paper, I think what is really, really helpful. You have 3 types of bags. You have your go bag, your van tools, and your personal hand tools. Talk about that just real briefly, because it's very, very specific and it's concrete. If I had, these are the things I put where I put them in order to do the job.
Sure. Okay. So in my first appendix, I've got pictures directly out of the app, which is on the website. The app shows what we consider a person's go bag. So each person on your team should have his own go bag, and it's a duffel bag, holds a fair volume of stuff. And this is where we put our PPE, our ear protection, our respirators, gloves, safety vest if you need it, contractor bags. These are all things that are handy to have. And then your own personal tools. If you're doing demo, what kind of tools should you have? Your own tools. And then the van tools, ladders, Burke bars, hand trucks, drill kits, oscillator tool kits. And these are everything that we have in our vans, and we have 5 production vans, and we run with all this stuff. If a person's in a different van, then he's got his personal tools that he takes. He's got his personal go bag. But the van is going to be equipped with all of our equipment, our supplies, our chemistry, and all these tools for a demolition. I've got a photo gallery on the paper as well, too, and it shows us doing garnet blasting. I do have a link to the hydroxyl YouTube video that I really like. And that's pretty much, the paper.
We'll put those links in the description notes here on the YouTube channel, and we'll also put some QR codes so they can link to those as well.
Sounds great.
Well, it's great. That's it. The entire process from soup to nuts, as they say.
Yep. And our goal is for the new guy to not have happened to him what happened to me. When you're a new owner and you get a shot at a job that pays in the 5 figures and in the healthy 5 figures, you don't want to turn it over to somebody else. I did it twice. You don't want to do that. You're a new owner. You're in business to do business. You're not taught this by anybody else. You don't want to learn it the hard way. I've already got it figured out for you guys. I mean, I can get you way down the field on this one. Now, you're going to have to use your head, adapt, change things here and there to fit your specifics. But I'm going to get you a long way down the field, and you can succeed at doing this this work that should be standard for any restoration company. Jobs that I had to give away, looking back on them, I could do them in my sleep now. It's once you understand what's going on, and that's why we call it Understanding Restoration, the Understanding Restoration series. Once you understand what's going on, and you got some tools to get you started and some processes to get you started, then you use your intelligence and your creativity to solve, specialty problems that arise in fire or cigarette smoke or mold or hoarding or any of the other ones that we're going to present on in the days ahead.